Ever since we moved into this old house, I've had trouble sleeping. My room is upstairs, at the end of a long hallway. It's big and dark, with a tall window that lets in just enough moonlight to cast strange shadows on the walls. My parents' room is downstairs, and when they close their door at night, it's like I'm all alone in the world. It started with the sounds. At first, I thought they were just creaks and groans that old houses make. But these sounds were different. The first night I heard them, I froze. I lay in bed, clutching my blanket, straining to hear over the pounding of my heart. The whispering would stop for a while, and just when I thought it was over, it would start again. A soft, rustling sound, like something moving slowly on the wooden floor. I was calling my parents. I called out once, my voice trembling. But they didn't hear me. They never heard me. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to see what was under there. Every night, the sounds got worse. Sometimes it was scratching, like nails on wood. Other times, it was a low, moaning sound, like someone in pain. I started sleeping with my light on, but it didn't help. One night, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was making those sounds. I took a deep breath, leaned over the edge of my bed, and peeked underneath. At first, I saw nothing, just darkness. But then, as my eyes adjusted, I saw something move. It was small, pale, and looked almost human. But its eyes were too big, and its mouth was too wide. It grinned at me with sharp, pointed teeth. I screamed and jumped back, hitting my head on the headboard. My parents rushed upstairs, and I tried to tell them what I saw. They checked under the bed, but there was nothing there. They said it was just a bad dream, but I knew it wasn't. The next night, I tried to stay awake. I thought if I could just stay awake, it wouldn't come back. But I was so tired. I woke up to the feeling of something cold and slimy wrapping around my ankle. I tried to kick it away, but it held on tight. I screamed again, but this time my parents didn't come. I fought and kicked, but it was so strong. It started to pull me off the bed, dragging me toward the darkness under it. I grabbed onto the bedpost, holding on with all my might. Then, just as I thought I was going to be pulled under, it let go. I scrambled back onto my bed, panting and crying. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. When morning came, I begged my parents to let me sleep in their room. They finally agreed, and I never slept in that room again. I've lived with my dad in our cabin for as long as I can remember. It's deep in the woods, far from the nearest town. I used to love the quiet and the way the trees whispered secrets in the wind. But one night changed everything. Dad had to go into town for supplies, so I was alone. It wasn't unusual, and I usually enjoyed the peace. I was sitting by the fire, reading a book, when I heard a strange noise outside. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then I heard it again. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps crunching on the gravel path. My heart started to race. I stood up and peered out the window, but it was too dark to see anything. I told myself it was probably just an animal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was out there, watching. I tried to ignore it and went back to my book, but the noise came again, this time closer. I could hear the sound of the porch creaking under the weight of something, or someone. Then, the doorknob turned slowly. My blood went cold. I stepped back, gripping the poker tightly. The door opened a crack, and I saw a hand. It was dirty and scarred. I swung the poker with all my strength, and the door slammed shut again with a loud thud. I heard a grunt of pain and the sound of footsteps retreating. I locked the door, my hands shaking, and backed away. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The operator assured me that help was on the way, but the nearest police station was miles away. It would take them time to get here. I sat in the middle of the room, every noise making me jump. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, I saw the flash of blue and red lights through the window. I ran to the door and flung it open, relief flooding through me as two officers approached. The officers looked around, flashlights cutting through the darkness. They found footprints leading away from the cabin, deep into the woods. One officer stayed with me while the other followed the tracks. After what felt like forever, the other officer returned, shaking his head. He said that they lost the trail but will keep an eye out. They took my statement and promised to patrol the area more often. As they left, I saw my dad's truck coming up the path. He jumped out, worry etched on his face. The next day, Dad installed stronger locks and even got a security system, but it didn't make me feel much better. The peacefulness of our cabin was gone, replaced by a lingering sense of fear. We never found out who the intruder was. The police never caught him, and he never came back. But the memory of that night stayed with me, a reminder that even in the quietest places, danger can lurk just outside the door. I had just finished a long shift at the factory. It was late, and the streets were quiet as I walked home. The town had a strange feeling at night, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I usually enjoyed the calm, but tonight felt different. As I turned onto Main Street, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. It was gunshots. They echoed through the empty streets, loud and sharp. I stopped, heart pounding, trying to figure out where they were coming from. Then, I saw bodies lying in the street. They were probably killed. Panic gripped me. I looked around, but there was no one else in sight. The streetlights cast long, eerie shadows, and everything seemed distorted, like a bad dream. I thought about running back to the factory, but something made me keep going, drawn by a mix of fear and curiosity. I walked slowly, my footsteps sounding too loud in the stillness. The first body I came across was a man, face down on the pavement. Blood pooled around him, dark and shiny in the streetlight. I swallowed hard and kept moving, forcing myself not to look too closely. As I went further, I saw more bodies. Some were slumped against buildings, others sprawled in the middle of the road. It was like the whole town had turned into a battlefield while I was at work. The smell of blood and gunpowder hung heavy in the air. I heard another gunshot, closer this time. I ducked behind a parked car, peering out cautiously. In the distance, I saw a figure moving. It was a man, holding a gun. He was limping, and he looked wild, like he was running from something. Or someone. I stayed hidden, watching as he disappeared around a corner. The silence that followed was even worse than the gunshots. I waited, trying to steady my breathing. When I finally felt it was safe, I stood up and continued down the street, keeping to the shadows. I needed to get home, to find out if my family was okay. My house was just a few blocks away, but it felt like miles. Every step was a struggle, every shadow a potential threat. As I turned onto my street, I saw something that made my heart stop. There, standing in front of my house, was another figure. It was a woman, but there was something off about her. Her head was tilted at an unnatural angle, and her eyes were wide and blank. She was holding a knife, the blade glinting in the moonlight. I froze, not knowing what to do. Then she started to move towards me, slowly and deliberately. I backed away, my mind racing. I needed to get inside, to lock the doors and call for help. I ran to the back of the house, hoping she hadn't seen me. I fumbled with my keys, finally managing to unlock the door. I slipped inside and locked it behind me, breathing a sigh of relief. What I saw left me in shock. There, sitting on my bed, was my wife. But she wasn't alone. She was holding our son, cradling him in her arms. They were both pale, too pale, and their eyes were wide and empty, just like the woman outside. I turned and ran, fleeing down the stairs and out the back door. I didn't stop running until I was far away from the house, from the town, from everything. I was asking myself, is this just a dream?